Welcome and thank you for joining G and myself for our final session of the Inclusion Conference.
Yes, thank you all for joining us. We're joined by Rowella, Carrie and Ben, who are here with us to dig deeper and reflect on the past 2 weeks and consider the future.
Yes, that's right. It's been a really busy week with a lot to think about and to consider for the future.
Okay, over to me. So one of the questions I've got for you guys, G and Jordan, and maybe Rowella and Ben, we can reflect on it as well, was to understand about personal growth for the week for you guys. Have there been any moments or learning or changes that you've thought about as we've gone on for the last couple of weeks? Maybe Jordan, if you could start, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. So, for starters, even during the process of helping co-chair the conference and organize it, which is an amazing opportunity, I'd actually learned, it's been a mixed bag of learning a bit about myself, but also learning about other communities and barriers that people might face that I might not know about. So to start, I'll just start with myself a little bit here. So while organizing the conference, I've been balancing my uni stuff and other stresses with the lockdown and things like that. But one thing I can say, which has helped me as a young person quite a lot, is just the support and the encouragement. And it's helped build my confidence a lot, because stepping into something like this, completely new for me. So just to say that, from my own personal experience.
We've lost Jordan temporarily. Sorry if everybody...
how much better it can be to be listened. And also, on the other hand, talking about, that support system, interacting with all these other people, for example, Vash, or, even talking to you guys in meetings, it's amazing the amount of people that are willing to support inclusivity, even though that might not be represented in certain systems we have and stuff like that. I will say that for one, that has been amazing. Also, on top of that, talking to, for example, with my talk with Vashti, I learned quite a lot about what it's like being a woman in the industry and the barriers that I face there. And it's hard to sort of really understand that without being, I'm not a woman myself. So it's quite a hard thing to really fully understand how that sort of materializes into that day to day and how that might affect someone. So it was amazing to really dig into these other communities and sort of learn about them and learn why it's important to actually consider what might be barriers to them and how to improve that. So those three sort of things I'd say are the main takeaways I had.
That's really useful. Great. Thank you very well. Come back to that, Jordan. We lost you there for a split second, so apologies to the audience.
Sorry.
But thank you. That's great. Over to you, G. What are your personal reflections of the last couple of weeks?
So same as Jordan, I have developed personally and learned myself throughout these 2 weeks. I think this one's a bit of an obvious one, but I needed reminding, which is you can become fatigued because persistence is crucial in enacting change. It's not just like a one-off action where you do something and that's fixed the problem. If you want something and you really want to get that, you've got to be persistent. And I myself personally felt at instances like a broken record, but I did just need reminding that no, it's fine to make noise and you've got to keep at it to actually make something happen. So yeah.
That's brilliant. Thank you. And just before we move on to the next bit, Ben, Rowella, have you got any kind of personal reflections about enjoying the last couple of weeks? I know I've got some that I'll share as well. Ben, over to you first, maybe.
Yeah, thanks everyone. I mean, it's been an amazing couple of weeks listening to all of the discussions that have come on. But one thing I especially picked up listening to Vashti and Dread MC and Jordan and Phoebe and Ben Pollard and G and Harry was to know your privilege and to recognise it and name it. And with all of the privileges that I may or may not have, and how unfortunately representative we have quite heavy privilege representation in our sector, and we need to recognise that. We need to then recognise our role as an ally, listen, enact what you've learned from listening, which is what G's talking about, and then listen again and see if what you enacted based on what you were listening to was right. I think in the last 2 years, I've learned more from listening to young people than I have in the previous 20 years of being in music education. That's a massive learn for me.
Wow, that's a lot. Definitely. And really good thinking there. I really like the notion of being an ally. I think that came up in Phoebe's talk as well. Phoebe Kemp mentioned, actually, if you want to support a community to be more inclusive, be an ally, be that person, know your privilege. So you're absolutely right, Ben. Rowella, have you got any thoughts to add on personal thinking for the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, I think one of the things that has really stood out to me the most is the focus on everybody different channels into the music, and how actually for other people not having the hands-on practical experience of maybe playing an instrument from young actually affects whether they think they can actually identify with learning music or qualify for learning music later on in life. It can be quite a barrier for some people. And yeah, that was something really big for me, because like I know what it's like to feel like because I don't fit into a box, I shouldn't even attempt going in that direction, even if it's something that I am genuinely interested in. So yeah, that was a big takeaway for me.
Thank you. Those are really interesting points and really important points to make, I think, about that. And quite often when we do conferences, it's not something we always reflect on as our individual learning about it. But I think it's really important because we can make some change so we don't end up in that position that you talked about, G, of being completely worn ragged by it or constantly speaking up. Over to you, Ben, for the next.
Thanks, Carrie. So I guess I'm looking, we've been talking about what change we want to enact, and thinking about what we can do locally to make a big difference. I'm just wondering if the three of you could offer up something that struck you in the last couple of weeks that could really make a difference locally.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to go first on that one. So yesterday we had the speed networking event, and what struck me actually was a comment, as quoted, but I can't remember if Malachi or Hamish said it, it's one of them, but they said the genre doesn't define what the content is, and sort of in relation to, how people view different genres and exploring that. And, it just made me think about how it would be good if, teachers and educators and stuff could not only listen to what, sort of inquire about what young people are listening to, but not just stop there, but also actually act on that a little bit. And maybe, so for example, if you have, when I was younger, I had a friend that loved rapping, and our curriculum was very traditional. And our music teacher, you could tell she was trying to accommodate it, but she just didn't really know, she just didn't really know about our world. And there's only so much you can do from that point of view, and obviously other time restraints and everything like that. But, having a think about it, I did sort of like try and think of things that maybe like would have been helpful at the time that could have been done, but weren't necessarily done. So, for example, it's just as simple as like, outside of school, for example, if a student came up to you and, was like, look, I'm interested in drum and bass, for example, imagine you could like say to a student, look, here's the software you can use to actually make that, and like here's, you know, a group of YouTube tutorials. So you might not necessarily be able to do that in the lesson, but at least you can kind of maybe take it into their own hands, or like maybe showcase work that they did out of lessons in the class, certain things like that. And you know, I'm not a teacher myself, so I can't, you know, I'm not going to sit here and say, you know, anything's possible. But like, it was just interesting to me, that idea that, you know, just because something might be hip hop, and there's explicit things in hip hop, but also there's a lot of stuff that isn't, and there's all the stuff in between. And I think it's to go step back from that and look at the problem from a step back. I would probably say just a little bit more freedom to just sort of like maybe even just look or explore into different things might be helpful, might keep things relevant. And yeah, that was kind of like a take back I got.
Thanks, Jordan. Yeah, I seem to remember a teacher talking about that yesterday as well, saying that their own music that they love would not be broadcastable in an assembly or whatever. So that we all have this kind of barrier of the thing we love not being able to be shared because of some explicit lyrics. But we have explicit language in English literature texts. We have explicit language in all subjects. But what is it about music that says we stop there, we don't allow it there? I think that's a really fantastic challenge, and we need to take that to the sector. G, do you have something that strikes you as something we can do locally?
It's simple. Just listen, for goodness sake. You don't listen to answer back, retain that information and respond. Listen for the sake of actually listening and hear what that person is saying to you. Don't just assume that you know better, because at the end of the day, you've not lived their experience. So you can try and relate, but you just won't be able to. And they do know best about their own condition or their situation. And I guess another thing would be write to your MPs, get them to listen as well, and join your musicians union or any union that is available to you. But yeah, I think this listening isn't just a local issue, it's a national issue, personal, everything. It is so intrinsic to enacting change. And people just forget about it. It's such a simple thing, but just remember, listen. So yeah, that's what I've got to say about that.
Thanks, G. And Rowella, you're somebody obviously who came through the local system, but have now you're somewhere else. And I just wondered whether, on reflection, what you think you've picked up in the last couple of weeks that perhaps if it had changed in time for you would have been a big lift for your ambition.
I have 2 points that come to mind, like not quite linked. I'll go to like the first point that I had, and then to the one kind of dealing with my own personal experience with say gospel music and like the music community like back home. But the first thing that comes to mind is using the resources in the community. So there are most definitely people out there who know how to work these sound systems and these doors and this music tech stuff that that teachers may not know how to use yet. And it's imperative that you reach out to these people who are more than willing, to give back to their communities and make sure that they're included in the music lessons that are given to kids. Because doing that is honestly so monumental for them. Just really utilize the people because they are out there. And it's, for the teachers, it's not like, don't be afraid of like what's outside of your comfort zone and what you don't personally know. Like, don't let that be a hamper towards the children's knowledge, like what you may not have had experience with yourself. Like be comfortable with being vulnerable in that and learning yourself through this hole in your knowledge that someone else like can actually give to the children and can benefit them, because at the end of the day it is all about what the children have come to learn. So that's like my piece on that. And then on kind of my personal experience with growing up, obviously, like for a long time, I've kind of seen myself and my placement in a space as a commodity of being the only one, the only Black woman, the only Black person, you know, caught in that intersectionality of being both Black and a woman in these spaces. And it's always been like the music, the focal on the music has been the main thing that's got me through that. But, you know, it didn't stop me from having those days just being like, why is this the case? Why is there no one else who's seemingly interested in it? And it's not that there aren't more people from my community who are interested. They just don't see themselves in it because they don't see themselves represented. You know, they don't, for a lot of people, they don't have the money. They may not have the family structure that can afford putting them through that system. And also like just seeing like more people who look like them, like leading the band. Like I know the difference, like for me, seeing a Black man or a Black woman or just someone different, just not even like just Black, like just someone different, taking charge and leading the band and like sharing their knowledge with us is something that it's so important, and it brings so many more people to the table, and it's not hard to do because the people are out there. Like the real question is, are we really looking for them and bringing them in? So yeah, that's a takeaway from that.
Thanks, Roella. And I think that we the Music Works, we really hear that in that representation is the start. Engagement will result from representation, and then after engagement becomes change and cultural development. The problem is so many people resist, it seems to me, representation as a start. They're just sort of not sure how to do it and whether it feels right or wrong. It is the start, and it obviously needs to then lead to wider engagement and cultural change. But I just think I've seen trepidation in other organisations about whether to go for representation first, and I think it's difficult to just jump onto the engagement trail without the representation. So I think it's something we need to be just much more open to and drive towards. Thanks, Ro. Carrie, did you have anything to add to that? You're on mute.
Yeah. Hi. Yeah, I really like hearing feedback from people. And I think one of the things that I'm so mindful of about this, and over the years of having worked in inclusion, listening to Roella and Jordan and G about some of that feedback, it's so important, exactly as G said, to listen, and representation is such an important part of it. I suppose from a personal perspective, outside of this conference, for a really long time, I've seen too many sloping shoulders about inclusion, if I'm really honest. There's a lot of, we do inclusion on a Tuesday, or nobody implied from that community, so therefore that's why they're not represented. And I kind of feel like it's the time to say that's not enough. It's not enough to say that, because if I am, and I really took to heart some of the comments that both Roella made and Phoebe made when we've had chats about this kind of stuff, is if I am to reflect my own privilege, which I have, I need to be a better ally for people that aren't represented in the room. So it's not enough for me to say, that's okay, you don't have the budget. It's something I have to push and question and challenge. And it kind of brings me on, because I know we've got a couple of questions, and maybe, do you want to take them now, Ben, or do you want to?
Yeah, there's a great question coming from Anita, which talks to what we were just talking about when it comes to privilege. She's asked, how to be an ally without presuming to speak on young people's or other groups' behalf. And it'd be great to hear from G, Jordan and Roella on that. How do you be an ally without speaking for someone?
Personally, I think with everything that's going on at the moment, Black Lives Matter, women, all of that, I think a lot of it is to do with education educate yourself on those issues. But again, do not assume that you know better. It's a case of stepping back a little bit from the situation and thinking, okay, I need to hold myself accountable because I know for a fact I may have done actions or acted in a certain way that goes against what I'm trying to achieve here. And I think it's just important to kind of remember that it's okay if you have done those things. Like, don't think that I've done it so I can't change. That's even more reason for you to do so. Educate yourself and then stand up for people, but don't go ahead of them. You know, just stand back and support, essentially. Yeah.
Thanks, G. Jordan, yeah.
Yeah, just to add on to what G's saying, I think that's a brilliant question. I think, like, I really like the term just like facilitating stuff. Like, I think it really like allows you to step back, but also put the power into the person's hands. And, you know, everyone has their different barriers and specific things. And some you just simply, you know, there's some that will just be naturally hard to understand, or you might not never really be able to fully understand. And I think accepting that, but also then trusting in the other individual as well, and like showing that you are, I guess, showing that you are making an effort to do that goes a long way for motivation and confidence. Because when you feel like someone's with you, I don't know, like when I was in school, I almost felt like I was trying to like, when I was in school, it just kind of felt like the teacher wasn't on my team, really, or in something like that. So just to make someone feel a bit more comfortable, basically what she's saying, really, you know, pretty much she nailed it on the head. But yeah, I just wanted to add, you know, just like facilitating things. And yeah, it's a good question though, for sure.
Yeah, thanks, Jordan. Rowella.
Okay, so sorry, can I just have a reminder of...
Yes, sure. So the question's really around how do you be an ally without feeling like, or without indeed speaking on behalf of the community you're trying to be an ally for. Is that clear?
That's okay. My piece on that, it's kind of similar, echoing what Golshat said, but it's as you're being that ally to really let the person you're being an ally to have the floor to speak, to not superimpose anything, or if it's uncomfortable to listen to immediately become defensive, and to shut the person down, or, you know, just kind of like cut them off before they've fully been able to express themselves. It's being really intentional about it. So it's like, as you know, like these kind of connections as they're being made, there's a lot of stuff to contend with there. There's a lot of baggage to get through for everyone involved, and it's not always going to be comfortable, but it's embracing that. Basically, in the allyship, it's embracing that fact and sitting in the discomfort and knowing that, like, kind of to get to the diamond on the other side, you know, you have to apply pressure to it, and that it is all worth it in the end, because what we're heading to is to have people from minority backgrounds be able to feel comfortable sharing their voice, and that, you know, that's not a bad thing to aim towards. So if it means like having to take a seat back, or you know, have the humility to stand by for this round, then it's for a good cause, because you got to think about the long game, really, the longevity of the road. What are we aiming for in the long run? And yeah,
I'd just like to add on to that, actually. I think within our generation, especially, there's a lot of performative behavior. So with the whole Black Lives Matter movement, everyone was posting things on their Instagram, but not actually doing the work at the end of the day. And if you're going to do that, don't even bother, because it takes a lot of time and effort to understand that you may not always be right, and that you've got to step back, listen. Again, simple thing. Why do we fail to do that? And yeah, just kind of don't do it for the sake of fitting in. Do it because you actually care. So yeah.
That's fantastic. Thanks, G and Ro. And I think that point about ally always feels like a cozy word, right? It feels like somewhere to be happy and joyful. Actually, acknowledging that it's going to be difficult and challenging, possibly, it's about time might be a way to put it, and that you need to face that and go on that journey together. I think that's really fantastic. And I think, the idea of performative over sort of people taking action, I think that's that we just need to start holding ourselves accountable to that, making sure we do listen and act and not just listen and, as you say, perform. Okay, great. So over to you, Kerry.
So we've got some great ideas at the moment and reflections, and now as we kind of move into our some of the feedback over the last couple of weeks, but also to kind of pull it together in a national reflection in terms of not just our personal development, the local within our community, but nationally what's happening. And there's been some really kind of interesting points that percolate up and down with all of this work. And I wondered whether we could do another kind of round robin about your hopes and challenges individually for the future around inclusion on a national perspective. What you'd like to see, specific actual change would be really useful in this setting. We talked about performative things just now, and actually things that we can actually change that will have a local impact and a personal impact. So if there's anything in there that you think would help, that would be great. Maybe if we start with you, Jordan.
Yeah, sure. So I've given a lot of thought for this one, and I think from the bigger picture, one of the main things I sort of like took nationally in terms of national participation inclusion is that just really stepping out of comfort zones and not being afraid to step out of a comfort zone, be it as a student, as a teacher, and really engaging in what it is to help reach that person's potential. I feel like a lot of potential has been missed, specifically because, it could be like some cases I've seen there's been miscommunication. Someone might not understand the genre correctly. There might not be, enough thought into a certain, into the curriculum or into the way that things are working. But music is one of those things where it's individual, it's different for everyone. It's obviously meeting that in the sort of schooling world, I can see how these sort of problems can arise. And to say down on a level of what people can do, I'm literally, it's going to sound like a broken record, but again, listening, acting, and then listening again to feedback from young people. My experience with the Music Works and working on this conference with other young people, being able to have their voices heard, and actually just it's as simple as just taking a note down of what we're saying, like even seeing that makes such a difference. Like if you just if I said something and like someone older than me and more experienced actually took that note down and went and like implemented it somehow, it's hard to say specifically for each person and each situation what that might look like, but just simply that, like seeing that just says 1,000 things. Do you know what I mean? Like you can paint, it's like basically paint, so I'd just like to say that.
Thanks, Jordan. That's brilliant. We'll probably come back to that a little bit. G, if you want to share with us your national reflections, things you'd like to see change.
Do you know what, Carrie? I would love to see more accessible everything, not just accessible buildings, but courses, just accessibility in general. And again, as John said, good access benefits everyone. So I don't know why we are playing this game of just making reasonable adjustments for those that need it. And you're not, at the end of the day, you're not going to lose anything from inclusion. You're only going to gain things. And just, again, with those access requirements or whatever, it's not just a case of one action fits all. Keep that conversation going. Listen, again, I think this is going to be one of the biggest things to take away from this whole conference is literally just listen. And yeah, I guess I want to, in the far future, I want to be able to go into a building and not have to worry about how I'm going to get up those steps or whether they have a ramp or a handle or whatever. I just want to be able to comfortably go to a venue and think, you know what, that's fine. They've met my access needs. And it's more of like, not just for the one person, they've thought about it broadly. And I guess within that comes budgeting. Budget access money into whatever project you're doing. Make sure that you have some money left over for any access requirements that somebody might need. So yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for that, G. That was really useful. Ben and Rowella, any thoughts on that as well? Ben, if you want to go first.
Yeah, I was really struck by someone in the speed networking event who we've talked a lot about the entry requirement for music at GCSE. And that we should be considering about lobbying for change on exam boards, make sure that young people are able to influence how exam boards are reviewed and influence the content. At the moment, it sounds like a lot of them are gathering dust, haven't been reviewed for a while. So really good I think it'd be great to look into that and work out how we can influence that as the young people can influence that. The other thing was this idea that the access barriers to the exam route, style, genre, formal process, formal experience, the risk of kind of standardizing and competitivizing young people in terms of music in a way, and because of those access requirement, the access barriers, whether that's financial, whether it's parental background or whatever it might be, it would be, and someone said it'd be the equivalent of saying you can't take French unless your parents speak French. And that really struck me, like, wow. I think and I think you can apply lots of that. You can't take English unless you've passed a spelling bee exam or something. It just wouldn't be applied to other subjects. And this is a subject that we know young people love. So it does feel like it feels like pulling the heart out of young people's access to just education in general through the thing they love by saying you can only do this if you've done these steps which are beyond you. It's crazy. Yeah, so those really struck me, and I think on a national level that really needs to be pulled apart.
That's really useful to know, actually. That's a really great way of kind of explaining it as well, in terms of the ideas about how people engage with music and how, if you compare and contrast it with other subjects, you're right. It does seem to pull at that. And it makes me wonder whether that is what's influencing GCSE and A-level and young people's and the reduction in uptake of that, or whether that has had an impact further back. And that's something for us to look at. Rowella, have you got any thoughts, national things that you'd really like to see change happening?
I think again, it's kind of like a mixture of what everyone's already said. The first one would be definitely the curriculum and what's included, making sure that representation can definitely start there. Like even when the different composers that are being looked at, making effort to for the picture to be a diverse one, and for people also to know when these different backgrounds are being looked at, to be able to like actually pin the music to the composer and to the culture of the composer that influenced how they were able to write the music in the way that they were. and to really see that through. For example, like, I don't know if everyone's aware of, say, the kind of thing that went on with the A-level curriculum and Courtney Pine, where they tried to pull it's one of his tracks from the A-level curriculum, and then people
explain a bit more about that. That'd be great.
Okay, so what happened there was that there was this quite a scandal about the fact that this legendary saxophonist, black saxophonist, Courtney Pine, like literally one of the UK's like jazz treasures, one of his pieces actually got it was put onto the A-level curriculum and then removed, and a lot of people were wondering why, what is going on, why would you do that? And if it hadn't been publicized, if attention hadn't been drawn to it, we don't know if behind the scenes like that would have actually been amended, and his work would have been reinstated as being worth studying. And just like actions like that, they undermine the forward motion that we're looking for. So on a national level, it's being intentional with that inclusivity and who we're studying, like really broadening that picture, and like following through with that thread. So that's a piece for me.
That's I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that, Ben, but I think it's really your point about kind of actually broadening the offer in terms of who you're looking at. It'd be really, if we could quickly look at that would be really useful, because it's come up a few times in the last couple of weeks in terms of what is on offer, music that's relevant to young people. But in terms of what could be looked at, is that something we could briefly touch on?
I mean, it's across every curriculum subject as well. So, like history, there's 59 different history GCSE courses. 59 different people referenced in history GCSE, of which only 12 come from minority backgrounds and things like that. It's kind of this crazy whitewashing, which has been, just very well reported. But in music, there's something even further than that, which is so much music that we listen to now. The first time that music was played by, or written and played by, a black person. And that goes across rock, pop, jazz, blues, hip hop, obviously, but the point is that everything we listen to starts with that, and that's not being said either. So I remember when I was at school, the furthest we went in terms of modern, it might actually sound like it was when I was at school, but was the Beatles, and we studied the Beatles, and that was celebrated as, wow, look, now we're studying the Beatles, who were 4 white men playing music that just years before was being invented by black men, but it wasn't talked about like that. Black men and women. And I think that's a real problem. There was a problem then, and it's an even more acute problem now, which is that we know even more about where music's come from, and we know how important it is to celebrate that, and yet we kind of say, but I don't know why we put it to a side. Well, let's stop doing it.
Brilliant. Thank you. That's great. That's great, Ben. Ruella, have you got anything else to add to that? No.
I think. I'm quite tired, so I keep zoning in and out. But no, I've literally just completely lost my train of thought.
That's okay. That's okay. There's a lot to dissect there. I think just if I recap for people a little bit here, some of the stuff that we've talked about here is kind of elements of lobbying about about the exams and how that looks, so that but also how music is reflected in different culture, and hearing from Ruella and Ben about making sure that we understand the history of music authentically is really important. Ruella's, you'd had it there in your hands.
Right there, actually, the history. That was actually, let me jump on that, because that is so important. Really digging into the history of the music that we're studying, and not leaving anything out, not leaving anybody out. Like, specifically looking for the representation of all the different ethnic groups, like in the history of the music, because everyone has been around since the beginning, like. So and all the information is there. There's no more reason to be selective about what we include and what we don't, because seeing ourselves also equally represented in history, it changes your whole perception of the music. And it's like, I was actually talking to one of my mentors from Berkeley about this, that like knowing that there's someone who you can like relate to, like who came before you, like it's like you grow a mentor in them, even though you can't even like physically talk to them anymore. They might have passed, they might have moved on, but like just knowing that they exist, like you connect with their music in a completely different way, and it encourages you, because you're like, oh my days, like I actually like. There's someone who looks like me who's done this before. Like I'm not pulling this out of nowhere. And yeah, it's like they become an unsung mentor to you. Yeah, it's so important. Like an example for me was learning about Mary Lou Williams. If you don't know who she is, look her up. It's still being contested, like just how much of an influence she's had in jazz, and like she's literally been around like from the beginning, was teaching all the greats like Monk and Bud Powell and Dizzy Gillespie and Charlie Parker. Like they were all going for music theory lessons at her house, but not enough people know this. And when I found out about her and just how much she'd written and just like how incredible she is, it made my heart like so warm. I was like, oh my days, like I'm not alone in this, I'm not alone. And that's what it means for each person to be able to see themselves and their culture represented in the music that they're studying, and it's really important to go after that. Like the knowledge of history does help us to know ourselves more collectively. So,
thank you, Rowella. That is such a good point to make, and it's so useful to hear that, and so vital to hear that. We've got a comment from Anita Holford online. Who says, thankfully, there's a whole movement around decolonising the music curriculum. Worth teaming up with them to talk about wider inclusion issues too. There may be info on the key moments to influence. So that's really something for us in Gloucestershire to start really take on board. And to kind of finish, we've got to wrap up now, but to kind of finish a little bit, and maybe we can each do a couple of minutes reflections before we close. But I suppose there's some key points to take away here, which was the importance of listening authentically with intent, which a couple of you have said, but also representation and leadership. One of the things that I know that G mentioned and Rowella and Jordan have mentioned is seeing people like yourself. So, one of the challenges for Gloucestershire is representation of different people in leadership roles, because we don't have enough of that. And then there's some work to do about the curriculum and what that represents, what that looks like authentically around music would be really key. So maybe if we do a round robin, we start with you, Ben, and go up to Jordan, G, and then end with Rowella, if that's okay.
Yeah, I think I just wanted to say a massive thank you to Dee and Jordan for just bringing all of this to the centre of all of our thoughts. The thing that we must do is not let it leave. This was not an opportunity for us to listen and walk away. It's to listen, learn, do, and review, and then listen, learn, do, review. Just a constant cycle, which there does need scaffolding to make that possible. As G says, we need to budget for things like that, not just for access, but for youth voice, and make sure that young people definitely continue to have a say, not just a say, but a driving influence and a role. And I think that's really important. So I'm definitely taking that away, and I'm really I was picking up on Jordan's point about facilitation and being an ally. I guess I just want to say I've heard that, and that's where I want to be, and where my failings are. My journey is towards that facilitation ally role. And this is being recorded, so you can tell me in a few months how I'm getting on.
Very cool.
Sorry, my connection is a bit funny right at the moment. Let's just jump in a bit. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Cool. I'd like to just say, I've learned a lot like doing this. And I think the one thing I take back for myself is how important it is to keep the conversation going. Like G said, persistence is key. Things don't happen within a day. And it's really nice to see the support and people wanting to act. It's nice to see people are willing to listen and are interested in making things more inclusive for people. So I think that's amazing. Met some amazing, people that have done a lot. And also on top of that, I'd like to just, thank, Karen, Emily for giving me Angie the platform to even try and make some sort of change. This is something for me personally I've been affected by in terms of lack of inclusion and things like that. So to be able to actually be given a platform to actually act on that has been amazing. So I just want to say thanks for that as well. And I just want to say keep the conversation going.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jordan. That's amazing. Over to you, G.
Yeah, so I think for me, it's been amazing. I've loved it. And it really, truly is a privilege to be in a position where I'm passionate about something and I actually can speak about that, which is something a lot of people do struggle with. Kind of having that fire to enact change, but not really knowing where to start. And it comes down to mentors. I had no idea where to even begin. And Ben was kind of like, yeah, there's this and that. You can join if you want. Mentors are amazing. And just thank you, everyone, for joining. Those that have been in the videos and the live Q&As, your input has been amazing and really inspiring. So I think overall, again, listen to what people have to say. And it just, I don't know. It's really difficult to encapsulate everything into a sentence, but I think just keep at it. And if you really want for change to happen, then if you put your mind to it, it will eventually. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, G. And Ruella's going to go last, but I'd just like to remind people, and we'll do it again, that Ruella, maybe you could mention it a little bit, but Ruella has a fundraiser we'll put a link up for her to support her to be at Berkeley, which she's been at. So this is for your second year, isn't it, I think? Or maybe I'm wrong.
This is to continue studying.
So I think for us, it's really important. One of the things we wanted to do as part of this is to support people, elevate them, that kind of thing. And that's part, and supporting Ruella as part of that. So thank you, Ruella. And I'll leave you to make the final comments.
Thank you so much. So echoing kind of what everyone said, that keeping conversations like this going is so important. I honestly feel really honored to have been able to be a part of it. And even just being in this conversation, it's actually really healing for me. Because, it's added on to the really monumental things that have happened in my life now, where I can now look back and be like, wow. So a conversation I thought we'd never be able to have in Gloucester, I was actually able to be a part of. I was able to be a part of seeing that change happen in my hometown. Because, I've just kept going and going to different places and discovering the world as much as I can, because I just love to just hands-on experience. But there's always a part of me that's always wanted to give back. And there's always, wanted, I've never been quiet about the fact that I am from Gloucester. I want people to know that and to be encouraged by it, and to see us as a community, as a shire, as a county, going for inclusion, when it's when I've had my own experience with it not always being positive. Like when I was coming up, knowing that the steps are being put in place to change that it's actually a really, really like heartfelt and healing thing for me. So I can't even begin to imagine just like the positive effect that this is going to have on loads of more young people's lives. So I just want to encourage everyone, please keep going for it. It's going to make a huge difference.
Thank you so much, Rowella. Can you tell us how we find your GoFund page, if that's all right? Are you able to tell us where people would go to look at that?
So one place that you can find it is in the link section of my bio on Instagram. If you have a link to that, it's literally, there's like a big capital letters like Berkeley fundraiser down here. Yeah. If not, like, it is one of the things that if you don't have Instagram, another way to find it is literally through going onto the GoFundMe site. You type in my name and the fundraisers will automatically pop up. So it's not too hard to locate. Either of those methods work, but it really does make a huge difference. Similarly, like, you know, it's quite crazy because to study in America, the money that you need, it's not anything that I've ever experienced in like the whole of my life, and I know that that'd be a huge barrier for like literally everyone, and it has been for everyone. So even though I'm able to be there, it's like, you know, it's speaking volumes to myself, and I know to many other people. And I'm very determined to graduate with everything that I stand for, and everything that is rolled up into my identity, you know, being Black, being Jamaican, being Nigerian, being from Britain, being from Gloucester, like all of that is rolled up into who I am. And I take, you know, it's like running a race. It's like I take all of that with me over the graduation finish line and like, look, we did it. Now let's bring some more people. Let's go.
Thank you so much for that. Okay, everybody. Thank you so much for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you. Thanks for taking part.